guys, so here I am today to talk to you about finances. I'm going to make 3 videos. The first video is going to be going over our budget. So I'm going to talk to you about where I was before we got married, where we were and when we were single and we were just the two of us, how our budget changed when we had Ruben and how it's changing now that we are having Rebecca. And in my next video, I'm going to go over our budget for a month, in a very detailed fashion, and show you guys what exactly we spend and how we budget for the month to make sure that we have enough money. And sometimes our account gets down to like $4. So in order for me to stay home, sometimes things can get really tight since I'm not working outside of the home. And in my third video, I'm going to go over tips and tricks and ways that you can save money and how to decide what you do and don't need in your budget and how to really make drastic cuts in order to save money. So this is video 1, where I'm going to talk about how our budget has changed and different things we've tried and just how it's evolved through our lifetime. So I grew up with a single mother, and my dad was a deadbeat dad and he didn't pay child support. So she was the sole provider for me and my sister. And she worked really, really, really hard. I saw her, bust her butt for us and take care of us. And I have so much respect for her. She was a school teacher. When my dad and her divorced, she put herself through school. I was around 4 or 5 when that happened. She got a job teaching, and that allowed her to have summers off with us, which were really special to me. And I went to the same school that she taught at. She taught middle school. So for those 3 years I was in middle school, I was at the same school, although I didn't have her as a teacher. And I never felt neglected because she didn't stay home with me. I never felt like she didn't love me. I knew she was working to, put food on our table and clothes on my back, and she always made sure we had fun. We were a little bit lower than middle class. I don't really know what you call that. That's how I felt. I'm using that term as to I felt that way. I don't know what the actual monetary numbers are and the actual definition for that is, but I felt like we were a little lower than middle class. I never went hungry. I always had clothes, even if they were thrifted. We could go to the beach. We never traveled that far away from our house or did big vacations. I never went out of the country, but we would go to the beach in our state. We lived in Virginia then. We would go to Kings Dominion and fun theme parks and stuff, but we didn't have enough money to do really long vacations. And overall, I would say I had a good childhood and that I saw that work ethic and that drive in my mom to take care of me and my sister, and that it definitely impacted and helps me manage money today. My mom never went into debt. She always talked to me about how important it was not to rack up credit card debt and to use the money that God gave you frugally and responsibly. She was very responsible with her money. So I grew up and I worked. I went to college. I worked in fast food. I lived paycheck to paycheck, but I never went into debt or I never spent more than I had. I probably bought too many things that I shouldn't have, but I'm really proud of my mom for teaching me that. I saved up a little bit of money. I probably had about $1,000 or $2,000 in savings when I met my husband. And my husband had a very different background growing up, where he grew up with a mom and dad, who his mom worked sometimes. She worked some years and not some years, and his dad worked a lot and he was an engineer. So they made lots of money and he went on lots of expensive vacations and he always had the nicest toys, but for him that was normal. So he just sees that as normal, whereas when he tells me about his childhood where he always had a PlayStation, and he had GameCubes and stuff like that, and Super Mario Brothers and the Nintendos, To me, that sounds like luxury because we never had any of those things, but to him, it's just normal. So we met and we got married, and my husband is 3 years older than me, and we got married when I was 26 and he was 29, and he had bought a house 5 years ago before he met me, 5 or 6 years ago, and right before we got married, he paid off his house. It was I don't know what you call it, the bank owned it and it was in a foreclosure, so he got a very good deal on his house. He paid about a third or half of what the houses in our neighborhood go for, because every time a house goes for sale, I look it up just to see what it's worth. He did a lot of work on it because it was a really big fixer-upper. I don't know that he has any pictures, maybe I'll ask him. But he worked really hard on it, and he had 5 years to make it into what he wanted and work really hard on it, and then we got married, and I'm really lucky that my husband worked so hard to pay off his house. It was very important to him. He's also very good with money. He's very frugal. He's more frugal than me, which sometimes makes us rub heads a little bit, but he's very good with his money as well. We got married with no debt. So we had no debt. As I said, he paid off his house, but we also didn't have any savings. That $2,000 that I had saved up, we used that on our wedding. We had a really small, very intimate wedding. We paid $2,000 for that. And then my husband paid for a honeymoon, which was around $1,800, and we went on a cruise to Mexico, and it was my first time leaving the States, and it was kind of scary and also kind of amazing at the same time for my poor little sheltered self. So when we first got married, I was still working, but I quickly quit my job because my husband works really long hours. He's also an engineer. He's an electrical engineer who works in computer programming. So he does computer programming, but he has a degree in electrical engineering. And he works really, really long hours. And I was working weekends, and then he was working weekdays, and we never saw each other, and we just missed each other. And he didn't have time to do chores. Like, he ate out every meal, every day when he was an engineer. It was crazy. So I wanted to take care of him and get him healthy. He was pretty overweight, and I had to quit my job to take care of him, and we had to make it work. It was a lot easier then than it is now with 1 and 2 kids on the way. And so in the beginning there, we didn't really budget. We didn't really have a budget. We didn't really talk about it. I would say we spent, looking back at our credit card statements, because we would just use a credit card and then he would just pay it off, we probably spent $2,000 to $3,000 a month, which is a lot of money, and we weren't saving very much at that time. So in that 2 years, the only big purchase that we made before I got pregnant with my son was my husband bought a car, and he used what we had in our savings to buy the car. And it's not an expensive car, it's just really cheap. So, not cheap, I don't know, maybe an $8,000 car, but we paid it off right away, and then we had no savings again. So when my son came along, I wanted to make a budget, and I wanted to stick with it. I wanted to save money. So we sat down, we wrote out a budget, and we budgeted like $2,000 a month for all the things that we needed to do. Now my son's birth, through all of my maternity appointments and birth, it ended up being $10,000. So that was a big chunk of our finances. And it was really expensive and shocking that we paid about $10,000 for all the stuff that we had to go through. I mean, medical care is expensive, and we had insurance. It's just we had a very high deductible, and our insurance only covered a percentage of our hospital bills. So now we are expecting our second daughter, and now we have something really different set up. We have tried the envelope method. We have tried using iPhone apps for budgeting. We have tried writing everything down. Nothing has worked. We have both been super frustrated. So finally, as a last resort, we decided we're going to basically have 2 bank accounts. We have a savings and a checking bank account. and we put some of his money in savings, and we put some of the money in checking, and we don't touch the savings account unless we have an emergency. Having the bank account with just the money that we allot for this month really helps, so we can't physically overspend. We don't use a credit card. We still have one credit card just to keep a line of credit open, and we only use our credit card if we're going to buy something and pay it off with the savings. That's the only reason we use it. So we know that everything on there goes in the savings, and this has been the method that has worked best for us. I know there's tons of different methods out there, and there's lots of different people that use them, and they work. Everyone's different. Find the one that works for you. It took us 5 years. Hopefully it doesn't take you that long. Every month now, $1,800 in the checking account, and that's what we live off every month, only $1,800. And for some of you that may seem like a lot of money, and for some of you that may seem like not a lot of money. It all depends on what you're used to and what you make. And my husband didn't want me to say how much he actually makes a month, so I'm not going to tell you how much we put into savings, but it's not a whole lot. It really isn't. We don't have very much in our savings, and we'll have probably hardly anything in there after we pay for Rebecca's medical bills and for so that's where we are at now. We spend $1,800 a month, and in my next video I will break that down for you and show you exactly what we do with that money. So I'll see you then. Bye.